Today, I'm very excited to have a special guest, special because she's my coach and she has an incredibly inspiring story to share. After receiving a health scare, she decided to completely change the course of her life. She became more mindful, embraced spiritual practices, and learned to live in the flow. She's now a successful entrepreneur. In this episode, we'll discuss the habits, the practices that help her in her entrepreneurial journey and how she made this reset happen. Welcome, Meera.
Thank you, Asta. Glad to be here with you and your audience. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. My pleasure. So, Meera, since we are talking about your reset, and we spoke about this health scare of yours that you faced and how it triggered the whole situation at your end. So, can you describe briefly the moment when your health scare made you realize that, okay, it's time to change my life?
Yeah, very happy to share, though it was not a very happy story. But nevertheless, all crisis can be converted into a blessing. And that's what I learned in hindsight. So, in that sense, I'm happy. Anyway, the moment that the health scare or health crisis happened is back in 2015. I was back then employed with an organization. I was gunning for the corner office, very ambitious. And in the course of those years, right, I had no concern about my health, sleep, food habits, nothing. So I was
Hmm.
just, my ambition, that's it. Eventually, I burnt out. I also had a bit of toxicity happening in the work culture, not to blame an external culture, but essentially, yes, that was happening. So I burnt out. I ended up in the hospital with a surgery, essentially a genetic condition sort of flared up. I used to have a propensity for uterine fibroids. At that point, I had 20 lemon sized fibroids. It was a very unmanageable condition on a daily basis. So I had to have surgery. But long story short, that surgery went wrong, and I had to go into another emergency surgery 3 days later because the doctor made a
Oh, God.
mistake. I almost lost my life. I was lying in the ICU for 2 weeks. I thought it's an in and out surgery, that's it, but I ended up staying in the ICU, and it was a life altering moment because when all of this happens, you ask yourself, what is happening? What is happening in life? And of
Hmm.
course, Western medicine or science gives you certain answers, but I was told, live with it. You might come here again. You might have to do an operation again. And I was not willing to accept that. So I
Hmm.
went down many rabbit holes, including spirituality, mindfulness, altering my life, like you said, 180 degrees. So coming back to your question, that was the time when I realized I need to make a change in my life.
Being in ICU for like 2 weeks and lying in hospital, what steps initially you decided to take to kind of, change your whole lifestyle?
Mm. Yeah, so reminding back, that moment when I was in the ICU and I had the two surgeries done and I had tubes going up and down my body, I literally almost came very close to death. You are at your rock bottom. There is no more bottom to go to. You have hit the pit, right, of a
Hmm.
life circumstance. So then what a human being does is try to crawl up the rabbit
Yeah.
hole. See, is there light? Is there somebody who can help me? Is there a insight that can help me be more healthy? So I started climbing up, but kept slipping down, climbing up again. Nevertheless, like I said, medicine or Western medicine told me, hey, this is going to happen again. And as I said, I was not willing to take that for an answer. Then intuitively, I started feeling, I believe there's a lot of stress that you shouldn't be taking on. You're taking on too many responsibilities, stress. You have too many rocks on your shoulders that are not yours to
Hmm.
carry on a daily basis, and you're not taking care of yourself. So that was
Hmm.
a gut feeling, an intuitive feeling that came in all of those days of silence. And then I felt inspired to go for a meditation class that a colleague of
Okay.
mine took me to. So that was in happenstance, and I happened to go to the meditation session, and I felt really relieved and calm. It was just an hour or two of calm, but I felt that I needed more of this, right?
Hmm.
So there was a thread of inspiration that started. Then, the meditation teacher suggested a book. My coach suggested a book. There is a book called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise
Right.
Hay, where she talks about psychosomatic illnesses, that all our physical illnesses are also manifested because of our mental condition. So your
Hmm.
genetic condition, there is a seed, it sort of flares up because of that stress, right? That was the case for me. So that's how I pivoted. So first intuition, then meditation, then reading books, and
Hmm.
then shifting my lifestyle, which included changing to a predominantly vegetarian diet from a predominantly red meat diet. I live in
Hmm.
Germany. My European husband, so we had a lot of meat in our cuisine, diet that time. So I reduced that, reduced alcohol, which was also part of my diet. Started exercising, started eating on time, the basics.
Hmm.
Started
Hmm.
making sure I slept, started making sure that I don't, you know, go into all the dark corners and stay up at night and binge watch whatever the TV series back then was. So pivots. It did not all happen in one day. It happened
Yeah, yeah.
over time. And it's also difficult for the family to accept it when somebody changes that quickly. So just to add
Yeah,
to that.
it's a big life stressor for those around you as well. And also, as they say that you can have 100 problems to worry about, but if you have a health issue, then you have only one problem in the world to worry about. Like everything just boils down to that. So I'll just come back to your career part. So while all this was happening and you were being more mindful towards your habits and lifestyle, so what happened to your job and did you continue?
Yeah, so my career did hit a reset button, but it took me 4 years. I
Hmm.
realized that this kind of stress, this kind of a stressful, toxic environment is not something I want to be part of. By being
Right,
in propagating the toxicity, so I took ownership of it, right? So
right.
essentially, I started wondering. So if not this, what else? Some of
Hmm.
the answers that came is less stress, more work-life balance, eating on time, all
Hmm.
things. So I started making those pivots in my career. So luckily, I we had to move from one country to the other in that 2015 time range, and I got a job with my last employer, which is Amazon. And when I went into the interview with Amazon, I actively asked about what is the work-life balance here.
Yeah.
Can I meet with some of the team members? I asked some of those questions, which one is normally afraid to ask, but these were
Hmm.
important for me. So I asked those questions.
Hmm.
So I pivoted into a career that was more respectful of the work life balance, and the team was healthy. I met my manager, really got along well with people. So that was good. But still, my intuition, soul, spirit, whatever you want to call it, kept telling me there is more. There is another field where your gifts are better utilized. And
Hmm.
back at that time, I had started coaching and mentoring people informally, my own
Right.
team, and so on and so forth. So I started exploring coaching or more human related professions because that is where my gift lies. And
Hmm. Hmm.
I made that pivot. So in total it took 4 years, but in those 4 years I arrived upon the answer that coaching is the answer. Then I
Hmm.
upskilled myself, which is got coaching training and certification, started coaching on the side at work, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then by 2019 I quit my job and fully launched my coaching business.
Okay, okay, interesting. I mean, it's good that you said that you openly asked about these questions like work-life balance. At least I don't know how is this in the West, but in Asia, maybe post-COVID, it has become okay to ask such questions. But I'm sure pre-COVID asking questions about work-life balance could be taken in a wrong direction that maybe you're not sincere, maybe you're not committed, and things like that. So now you are this successful entrepreneur, solopreneur, managing your career. Can you share any highs and lows of your journey? This 5 6 years journey that you've been.
So the entrepreneurial journey itself is a spiritual journey. Let me tell you that. For me, entrepreneurship has been the most spiritual of pivots in the sense that there are such high highs and low lows, and
Hmm.
you really have yourself to rely on because you are the decision maker. You get to enjoy the fruits and the pain of your decisions. So essentially, in the beginning, let me start with the pain, right? The pain
Right.
is, in fact, the confusion in the big amounts of fear one faces when one decides to let go of the corporate cushion, the
Yeah.
stability income, the bonuses, the stocks, and then you have to announce to your family saying that you're going to do this, and they think, "Are you crazy?" And
Yeah.
they obviously discourage you because they want to take care of, they want to make sure you're safe. So
Yeah.
it's in figuring that out. And then the next thing is, as an entrepreneur, you start putting yourself out on social media, talk about your stuff. There is so much imposter syndrome because I used to think there are so many coaches doing what I do. What is special about me? So I have to
Hmm.
overcome that imposter syndrome. fear of failure, right? I used to do a lot of videos already from the start. Um, and it was like, oh my God, people must be seeing my videos and thinking, what the heck is she doing, right?
Yeah.
So I had to overcome all of that. So those are pain points. And of course, there is the real thing that you're not making money in your business in the first few months, or probably
Yeah.
even a year. That doesn't match your corporate salary.
Yeah.
Then I kept going. Again, that inner voice kept telling me to keep going. There's something
Mm.
here. Stay persistent. So I kept going, and then 2020 was a COVID year. Still, I was in green. My business turned green in the COVID year. 2021 was when I felt okay. I finally arrived at the scene
Okay.
because I started getting a lot of corporate engagements. A lot of private clients came my way. You came my way, I guess, in 2021. I actually started, I did a few engagements for big corporate names like Microsoft and stuff like that. So I felt like, the compass is turning in the right direction.
Mm, mm,
Most
mm.
great highs when you get that validation from big clients as well as amazing clients like you. And then, of course, like I said, the highs are always followed by a low where probably you don't get that kind of income for a few months. Then you start doubting yourself again. Then
Yeah.
it really happens and it picks up, then you're on a high. And what I have learned in terms of as a spiritual lesson, what I said, this is a spiritual lesson, is the resilience to accept yourself and be kind to yourself equally, whether you win or you fail, and recalibrate one's definition of success and failure. But we'll
Mm.
come to that later. But this is as succinct as I could get about the highs.
Yeah. I think because you're right, we attach so much of our self-worth to the external factors, how much money we earn, how many people like us, what rank we hold. It's I know that's what everyone says, but I personally still find it very hard to separate my self-worth from all these external factors. Maybe because we are so wired to look at it that way.
Absolutely, so right.
Okay. You said that it was a lot of these micro steps that you discovered that this is my next, because for you the human connection was very important. So if somebody has to figure out, because that I meet a lot of people and they say I don't know, I want to do something but I don't know what do I do, what's next, where do I want to take my career to. So how can one figure out what's next for them?
Mm. That's a great question because there is so much potentiality. The first question to ask is, once you realize that you want to make a pivot, is to figure out, look back at your life for the last 30, 40 odd years, however long you've been alive, and see what are those moments in time where I felt like on a high, where I felt like I was working on something joyful, I was feeling excited about what I was working. Probably it was a school project, a college project, something at
Mm.
work, right? For me, it was always when I did a project with school kids, like my fellow school kids. When there was a project where we were all doing teamwork kind of stuff,
Mhm.
I was a leader and I was managing a team and helping them solve their problems, right? So for me, those dots connected. Okay, so that is one data point, right?
Mhm.
Second data
Mhm.
point is, what is it that you want to experience that your life doesn't have yet? For me, the answer was, reduce stress as much as possible, then have healthy work life balance, work on something that is of social impact, etc., etc. So these two data points come together, and then you look at these two data points and maybe there are plethora of options. So for
Mm.
me, an easy option to go would be HR, HR related fields. There are several.
Mm.
Then you explore that, you talk to people doing that job, you explore that, then you realize, maybe option A in this field, maybe option B in this field, maybe not. So you
Mm.
throw out options, then you filter those options and see which ones make sense to me. Now,
Mm.
another specific thing one can employ is this concept of ikigai. It's a very
Oh.
popular concept, as you know. It's a broad concept, but when applied to the concept of career or making a fulfilling career, four things intersect.
Mm.
One is, what are you good at?
Mm.
Second is, what do you love? Amongst these things, what do you love? Third is, what does the world need? Right? Because you want fulfillment. You don't want to do just about anything. Fourth is, what can you monetize? What can you be paid for? Because
Right.
a lot, we all, from a point of view of career, we want to pay our bills.
Right.
Which of these skills can be monetized? So when these four intersect, that's the sweet spot. And I find it very, very important to ask that, do that exercise when somebody is doing a pivot.
Hmm. But I'm sure, I mean, in our busy lives, it's not easy to go so deep and, do those checks. So I believe you recommend that we must do that, like take some time out. And if we are really struggling to figure out what's next, we really need to go deep and answer these questions.
Yeah, because when we don't ask these questions and we keep the status quo, we are living in a sense of unawareness. We are
Hmm.
unconscious to what's going well in our life and what is not. So
Yeah,
it is important to be aware. Absolutely.
right.
I mean, I believe that we are our own biggest instruments of peace and self fulfillment. So we have to take care of ourselves. This temple, this is the body, mind, spirit. Then we get to be of use to ourselves as well as others in our lives.
Okay, very interesting, Meera, since you mentioned about Ikigai, finding your Ikigai, and there is this material component also that, what you get paid for. And I know that you heavily lean on the spirituality side as well. Um, I find it personally hard to understand, or even many others, that how spirituality and money can go hand in hand in this materialistic world. A lot of these famous people like Oprah Winfrey, Steve Jobs, they openly talk about, spirituality. But, often people dismiss that saying, oh, they have earned enough money now, so they can talk about all this. So I want to specifically understand from you how do you see spirituality and money intertwined together, or if at all they can coexist?
I totally believe that they can coexist because we are living in a material world. We need to pay our bills. We need to take care that our children get food, shelter,
Hmm.
clothing, and ourselves as well. So money is a medium. Money is a tool that is of good in the hands of the right people, and that
Hmm.
is where a person with a spiritual bent of mind, and forget about spiritual bent of mind, who wants to do good in the world will use it as a
Hmm.
tool for good. He or she will do charity or at least take care of the family, which itself is the healthiest subunit of society.
True.
uh, Coming to our culture, right, Indian culture, where we both from, we have seen Lord Vishnu. His cohort is Goddess Lakshmi, who is the goddess of wealth. So even
Hmm.
in our spiritual tradition, we've been given that very compelling guidance that spirituality and materialism can coexist. And my quest is to lean into how can I use my material quest in my spiritual evolution and not divorce them,
Hmm.
because rightfully or not, I'm in this material world. And that is where the concept of karma yoga, which Krishna advises to Arjuna on the battlefield, and it's quoted in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, do your work in the world, whether it's to plow a field or to coach or create a podcast, do that with a sense of service to the
Hmm.
people, to your audience, and don't be attached to certain fruits coming true in a certain way or in a certain time period, that I need to have 1 million followers in one day or $1 million in my account by next
Right.
month, etc.
Hmm.
When we do that with utmost service, we are actually being spiritual. We are actually putting our gifts to good use, right? Whether you believe in Krishna, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in the universal intelligence or physical intelligence, whatever, you would have seen those moments when you have put yourself in service or support of somebody else, or just were there for somebody else. You would have felt an elevation in your spirit, in how you
Right.
feel inside yourself. So I do believe, to summarize, materialism and spirituality can coexist. And in fact, if we use the material pursuit
Right.
for larger good, we are in fact walking the spiritual path. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. And I love this part of being of service to others, because there was this another podcast which I was hearing, and there was this man who advised that, you can't control other people's reactions and their behaviors and actions. So what you do is do your best. And that's when I started my podcasting journey. I was like, I will put myself into service of others by bringing the relevant topics and good guests on my podcast. And I will not worry about how many likes, how many comments, how many subscribers I'm getting, because I need to really detach myself from that. Otherwise, it's hard to move forward. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I like that service part
But
specifically.
Hopefully in your journey. I know your podcasting journey is still very nascent, but the amount of heart and soul and effort you put into it, Asta, and the quality of the content that's coming out it doesn't look nascent at all. And I can totally see, because we've worked on the back end of it all as well. I can totally see how much of the service mentality with which you come in, the love for your audience. So I'm sure
Thank
we'll
you.
continue to love you more and more. So yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so Meera, since we are talking about subscribers and likes and all of that, I know you have built a very successful community across social media, especially on LinkedIn. Now you are a top voice, and I believe specifically in present time as an entrepreneur, it's or even as an individual, it's very important to build that community. So I want to ask you, what three pieces of advice if you were to give to others on how they can build a successful community?
Yeah. Okay. So, thank you for the good words. Yes, I have built that community over the last 4 to 5 years, and I'm very, very thankful to each and everybody who comes into my world. So, first point is again service. Instead of asking how can I make money off of every like or every follower, I have learned to ask the question, how can I support my audience today? What is a
Mhm.
question or an insight I can share based on my knowledge and experience that would bring them solace, that might bring them an inspiration. So as a coach, I talk about career related aspects every day, and that doesn't come from what does Meera want to talk about. I think about what might a member of my audience find helpful. So service
Right.
first. Second is consistency. Consistency
Right.
is I don't throw a piece of content and run away and come back a month later and then 2 months later, etc. To build a relationship, we need to show up, right?
Mm.
That means my audience knows that Meera cares about me. She puts out a piece of content every day on LinkedIn, on Instagram, weekly on
Mm.
newsletter. That is my
Mm.
commitment to my audience, through which I build a relationship with them.
Mm.
Third
Mm.
is gratitude. It's important, like there are times, and I've felt this as well, when your audience grows 10K, 20K, whatever, ego sets in. Happened to me as
Mm.
I still have to manage it very carefully. It's like, oh, I'm this whatever big voice. Then you see other
Whatever I would say.
correct. And then you see others having 2 million followers, and you're like, oh, I'm such a failure. So you can go through that yo-yo or just be equanimous about it. The word equanimous
Yeah.
comes from, I picked it up during the time I did Vipassana meditation. Anyway, it talks about the quality of being equal minded or equal spirited, whether there is quote unquote failure or win, whatever you
Hmm.
define that as. And just be in a spirit of gratitude to your audience. So
Okay.
nowadays, what I do is every time I have a new follower on LinkedIn or Instagram, I literally say this: "Thank you for joining my world. I'm so grateful for it. I hope I'm of service to you." And as I say this, I have goosebumps. But these are the principles I live by.
Wow. So service mentality first, then the consistency that you show up for your audience and build that relationship. And third is gratitude, which I really, really like that you do this silent prayer in your heart every time a new person joins your family. This is great. I think this is what we forget to do or say, oh, I did it. It's because of me. But yeah.
That again, spirituality grounds us. My belief is that whether you believe in God or just a chemical, physical dimension of intelligence, there is
Yeah.
a larger presence that we are three-dimensional human beings. There is a multi-dimensional universe out there, and if we are gratitude for all the gifts we've been given by that multi-dimensional universe, and be a
Mm,
channel for its wisdom and truth to flow into the world, that is
yeah.
service. And with that, you, me, everybody benefits. There is no
Right.
greed, there is service, there is a larger humanity. So that
Right.
is a principle, very, very hard. I know I'm talking high concepts. It's very, very hard to practice. But I try to actively remember and practice it as much as possible.
Right. So, Meera, we will not go into spirituality. It's a very heavy topic to be discussed here right now. But just very briefly, if you can explain what do you do personally when you say that you practice it? What does spirituality mean to you, and how do you practice it every day?
Um, I practice meditation. So that means no great shakes, nothing major. I just sit quietly in one corner
Mm-hmm.
and breath and any bodily sensation, and I am present with it. The second thing is, then after I achieve a sense of equanimity, I might do pranayama as well if my body is in a big state of flux. Then I offer prayers to the form of the divine that I love, which is Krishna. He's somebody I always turn to for advice and surrender. So I offer a prayer to Krishna. And then third would be, again, we are human beings. We have so many fears and anxieties come up. I
Hmm.
just let them surface. I don't push them aside. I say, what is the fear I hold today? What is an anxiety that's coming up? Let me listen.
Yes.
And that is a process of inner child work that I have learned in the last few years, which I use in my coaching as well, which is not to shoo away your anxieties, but to be mindfully present with them and
Emotion.
then reach a resolution. So these are three practices I swear by every single day, which brings me a lot of peace and calm and even clarity and direction.
Right. That's wonderful. What are some of the non-negotiables for you when you plan your day or week? Or if any practical tips you can give to our audience that how we can structure our day in a more mindful manner so that we don't lead to a burned out life, but like a more holistic life.
Absolutely. I love the word priority in this context. So there is a principle called Pareto, 80-20, which means 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. So I
Mm,
ruthlessly prioritize what's on my schedule and
mm,
say, am I prioritizing the right 20%? And I do
mm.
that 2 months ahead. Now I'm traveling to India on vacation for 6 weeks. I live in Germany.
Right.
I've actually ruthlessly prioritized all the way until first week of July till I'm back. Okay. I
Mm,
might do minor modifications, but that prioritization is important. Of course, it gets into my calendar, gets scheduled, all of that.
mm,
Second, white space. I believe in the brain, the body, and the spirit having downtime to cut out all the noise, process whatever is going on, recharge and recuperate. So I made sure I go for a walk if it's a good, if it's good weather, if it's not raining too much or snowing,
mm, mm,
walk in the middle of the day. Or I plan lunch. I don't rush through lunch, which was
mm.
what got me into the hospital bed 10 years ago. I don't want to do that.
Right. Right.
Space is the second thing. Prioritize white space. Third is communicate. I do have a team by now who works with me. So it's
Okay.
important for me to proactively communicate what's on my mind, my plans. I don't wait for them to have to guess or ask me questions. That
Mm.
proactive communication makes sure that I'm fully supported, that I'm also being a good leader, that I don't put them in a state of flux so everybody can function as efficiently as possible. So these are the three things I swear by.
Okay, that's great. Just for the benefit of larger audience, do you structure your week like on a weekend, or how do you do it?
I used to have a specific structure that I used to follow, a framework which I can share with the audience here. But now I've been using it for like 3, 4 years. It's become like a habit. I don't need to like put it in that format. So there is
Okay.
this format which is called Covey matrix or Eisenhower matrix. Essentially, it's the same thing. You take your list of activities. First, do the Pareto, which is 80-20. Then you plot it on a 2 by 2 matrix.
Okay.
On one axis is importance of the task to be completed. Second is the urgency of the task. So urgency is how time critical is it.
Mhm,
Importance is that Mira needs to do it or not. So I could probably
mhm,
delegate it. Then it's not important that I do it. That word is misleading, but essentially that. So I look at my calendar for the next week or two. I used to do that. I would put it in the Covey matrix, or at least mentally do that exercise and say, important and urgent, Mira must do it right away. It's not important that Mira needs to do it, but it's urgent. Immediately tell the team member, be very clear in the communication and expectation. It's not
mm,
important, it's not urgent, delete it.
mm.
It's not urgent, but it's important that Mira needs to do it. It goes into my calendar later, maybe next week, next month. So it's a
Mm.
very, very potent one. It has helped me and people in my life as well, like my clients, my team, etc.
So since you're so ruthless about it, I believe that you have also learned the art of saying no.
Oh yes. To
Right.
say no is a service, not just to yourself, but also to the other person, because you're being honest, you are
Mm,
trustworthy, and you hold yourself and others to higher standards of performance. Now, I don't mean in an egoistic way. So when I
mm,
ask, for example, somebody, does this need to be done today or can it wait till next week? You're
mm.
also encouraging the other person to think
Think.
different.
Mm, 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 mm. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we are almost towards the end, Meera. I want to know if there are any current goals or aspirations you are chasing, if you can share that with our audience.
Okay. As a recovering hyper worker, I have literally, reduced, or literally improved the quality of my work life balance, harmony, whatever you call it. But my goal this year is to generate the same amount of income that I did last year, or 30% more. So it's that band that I'm working in by working lesser. So my goal is to move into a 3-day work week. And I'm saying
Okay.
this very openly right now. So I'm holding myself accountable and I'm starting to sweat. I did reach a 4-day work week, but then I quickly scrambled back to five day because habit. You quickly relapse. So,
Right.
long story short, my immediate intent by the end of the year is to move to a 3-day work week, create the same or 30% more income, and continue to support my audience, grow my audience, and continue to refine my voice and my offerings as well.
Wow, which means I need to do a podcast with you again early next year to ask about your goal achievement of 3-day work week and give us all also some insights about it.
Thank you. I'm gonna use this, what I said here as my commitment, declaration of commitment, and that's gonna hold me accountable. Thank you.
Okay. So, one interesting thing which I'm curious about, because so many people you interact with day in and day out, you coach a lot of people from all over the world. I want to ask you from your coaching experience, what do you think is one thing which is largely missing in people's lives, but can be a game changer?
Hmm. Awareness.
Hmm.
I'm going back to a conversation point we had earlier on today, which is we don't take a step back, we are on the hamster wheel, something to that effect we had said, right? We go about our day, we
Yeah.
don't have time to self reflect. But
Yeah. Yeah.
we can take just 5 minutes, you know,
Hmm.
in a stress free environment, like go on a walk or just walk pace around your house in a soft pace without your to-do list, without all the responsibilities on your shoulders.
Gadgets.
5 minutes, it it makes us conscious to what's working, what's not working, and make those tiny pivots. At least that consciousness arises, and then you have the choice to make a pivot or not, whether it's in terms of stress management, a difficult relationship at home or in the office or anywhere else, or what do I do next in my career, right?
Hmm.
Questions we
Hmm.
keep thinking, these are big questions which I need years to answer,
Yeah.
but you already find small hints if you give yourself the space. Because from a neuroscience perspective, there is a book called Limitless by Jane Quick, if somebody wants to refer that.
Mm-hmm.
The concept is that your brain needs downtime to process information. You have asked yourself a lot of questions, and there are enough data points being thrown at you apart from your own reflection. You need to give your brain the downtime to process that. And you don't need to do any hardcore machination of the mind. You just need to give it a few minutes a day. Uh,
Right.
so for me, my preferred way is to go for a walk or a journal, right? All of
Mhm.
those things help, or just sit quietly in meditation. Again, I am not an expert. This tends to work for me. This has apparently worked for many masters in the world. So I follow the masters and humbly take my steps forward.
Nice. But you're very right in saying we just sit on these things thinking, oh, I need like a long time to discuss this. But I think if we are just mindful to really think about what's stressing me this week, how can I make those, tiny little changes, I think that will be great. But I love this that awareness is largely missing. With this, we are towards the end. Meera, it was lovely to talk to you. As always, I want to ask you if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best medium they can reach out to you?
There are three ways. One is, of course, LinkedIn, Meera Ramani. I'm on Instagram as well, same handle. And on email, you can always reach out to me on email. It's meera@meeraramani.com. I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions. And I just want to, it's a big I want to share a big thank you to you, Asta, and to your audience for patiently listening. I hope I have been of service. And if there is anything I can help you with in the future, of course, I'm happy to come again on the podcast. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Asta, you are a pleasure, and thank you for doing this huge service to your community.
Thank you very much, Meera. I am 100% sure that you have done service to many, 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 not just your audience, my audience, by doing this podcast and sharing some wonderful nuggets that you have shared. So, thanks a lot.